This episode is brought to you by VPP Simplified. Now you can get element by element tracking and guidance for your VPP journey. Every aspect of the VPP requirements in one easy-to-use interactive spreadsheet. Look, achieving VPP star status can be tough, but understanding what it takes to get there can be simplified. This VPP Gap tool will help you do that. Go to vppsimplified.com for more information.
Welcome to the Safety Pro Podcast, where we help you manage workplace safety one episode at a time. And now, your very own Safety Pro, Blaine J. Hoffman.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Safety Pro Podcast. We're going to tackle workplace security. We're going to touch on workplace violence. That's a hot topic right now, unfortunately. And we'll talk about what you can do at your workplaces to make sure that, one, they're safer, more secure, and two, how you can approach workplace violence from a program standpoint and offer some training for your employees and at least get you started down the right path. Now, obviously, workplace security is a critical aspect of any business planning, including your policies. Now, security may have been a concern when you're controlling access to your property at night or the building, preventing like theft of materials, things like that. Now we have intellectual property, we have IT, we have information data that is vulnerable. So you got that kind of security, right? Well, regardless of your size, the location or whatever technology, every business has to have adequate risk assessment, security processes, and crisis management in place today, regardless. So this is what we're going to try to touch on and send you down that path. I'll even get have a link here in the show notes to sort of have a template policy that you can download. I'll go ahead and throw that in the show notes for you as well. So look for that link. But basically what I want to do is I want to talk about some of these topics. Now, security encompasses all sorts of areas like the security of the property itself, company assets, the employees and customers' personal security. There is also the threat of violence, to employees from other employees, customers, clients, former employees, or strangers, right? So, we're gonna try to get our arms around a lot of this stuff, so bear with me. But proper security provisions, that's going to help you to assess potential threats and devise strategies and plans to alleviate or eliminate those threats. We're going to talk about workplace violence here at the second half of this episode. So I'm going to just talk about internal security, right? There are various issues that can affect your internal security. Many of these surround protecting, the company information, while others deal with how employees react in an emergency. So issues affecting internal security could include any of the following items: emergency procedures for fire, disaster, bomb threats, chemical threats, etc., evacuation plans and emergency preparedness, access control for restricted or secured areas, adequate computer and information system protection, payroll and revenue protection, and employee access to an updated list of in-house and outside emergency numbers. Now, also understand that, certain local law enforcement agencies have jurisdiction over your facility or multiple facilities, and they may need to be contacted in an emergency and get access to your facilities. Make sure that employees know how to contact in an emergency, who to contact, and involve those agencies in the workplace emergency planning process. And here's just an example. Now, law enforcement might be able to help you suggest measures to be taken for specific situations, arrange for employee briefings on certain security issues. They may be able to help you with the types of incidents to report to law enforcement. If your employees are experiencing certain incidents, what would trigger a call to the local law enforcement. They also might be able to help explain, what actions are to be taken to preserve evidence, explain what actions to take to confront an intruder or angry customer or armed coworker, things like that. We're going to talk a little bit about that later, but also what to look for to identify suspicious packages and help you identify areas to improve in just overall workplace security situations. I mean, It's a joke in law enforcement, right? That all of them are just criminals with a badge. They think like a criminal. They have to, right? So they might be a pretty good resource for you to come in and say, hey, where do we have some, points of entry that somebody that wanted to do us harm or do some damage or steal, where would you go first? And which parts of the building and why, and what can you do to protect those? So, getting your local law enforcement involved, it certainly will help. It'll help build a relationship and get you to know who they are, get them to know who you are and the layout of your facility. But you may have to go a little bit deeper with some of the topics, which I'll touch on later. Now, as for training, workers with job tasks or locations that place them at higher risk for violent incidents should be provided with specialized training that addresses the specific nature of the risk. Managers and supervisors, you should also undergo the same training that the employees go through. Plus, you should have some additional training to enable you to recognize a potentially hazardous situation or to make any necessary changes in the physical structure or the plant itself, and to implement emergency policy and procedures. Now, managers and supervisors should also be trained to ensure that employees are not placed in assignments that compromise safety and in the methods and procedures which will reduce security hazards. They need to ensure that employees follow safe work practices and receive appropriate training to enable them to do this. They should reinforce the employer's security policies, promote safety and security, and ensure employees receive additional training as the need arises. So they have to be hands-on with their employees' work as it develops so they can recognize when additional training and support is needed. If you have security personnel, they need to be trained whenever possible for the specific job, the facility layout, security hardware on the premises, and particular high-risk jobs. So keep that in mind as well. Now, physical security of a facility can include many different features. I'm going to list some. External lighting, very important. Very important that when employees notice a particular light is out in the parking lot near the building, did it just go out or was there sabotage? Is this some pre-planning to see how long it takes for the employer to react and respond to these things? So always have a rigorous maintenance protocol around keeping facilities well lit, gates working properly, latches, things like that. Signage directing visitors and drivers, make sure it's very clear to anybody visiting or a delivery driver, somebody arriving at your site, that it's crystal clear where they are to go. So that is very important. A lot of times you have people wandering around the building. They make it inside the building and they're like, hey, I've got a truck back here that I'm just trying to make a delivery. Do you know where I go? And they're in the middle of the plant floor and the workers are like, yeah, dude, the dock's way down there on the other side. Make sure you have a very clear protocol for deliveries and visitors. You may need to implement some closed-circuit surveillance system. Something that's web-enabled that you could see remotely would be good as well. Alarms, even silent alarms, some standard security, physical security stuff. Metal detectors may or may not be your thing, depending upon the size and scope of your operation. But picture ID cards, if you're big enough, people should be walking around with ID cards. They should be visible on their person at all times. I worked out at a military installation doing some DOD work, and, I'm going to tell you right now, they would just flat lock you out. They didn't care. You had to have your CAC card, right? Your common access card. So they, same thing here. Make sure that you don't allow, workers to hold the door open for other workers. It gets a little weird. A lot of times I've been in plants where this has happened while I was there, where one afternoon we're all sitting around a conference table and having a meeting. This is when I was doing consulting. The next day we found out, after we were already in the plant, that one of the employees that was in the conference room with us the day before was let go. Nobody knew. If I had seen that guy come back up to the gate and go, hey, Blaine, hold the gate. I didn't know he was let go. You need a policy, a culture that says, sorry, Bob, I know you, but I'm not allowed to let you in unless you have a badge. You have to call your supervisor. That gets kind of tough, but you have to kind of foster that culture in that environment. You have to set that example and you have to encourage it, set that expectation. So picture ID cards. Emergency internal code words may work. Code blue on aisle 4, like you hear in the store. You always wonder what these cryptic messages are. But, maybe having some sort of code for a certain level of the organization. Building access control, making sure you control access to the building. Interior safe rooms for employees to escape to. Those would be good. Inspection of all vehicles entering the premises might be an option if you have the facilities and the personnel to do that type of stuff. Oh, by the way, control all points of entry to the facility. That's something you're going to have to do. I've seen it where you can badge into the front, but if you walk around to the back of the building, the doors are all propped open. Also, escorts, after dark, making sure you leave in groups. People don't leave alone. Also, very important, auditing and testing of all security systems and protocols on a regular basis. You've got to make sure that you test the strength of these defenses and, try to compromise them to see where your weaknesses are. Now, personnel security, it's physical security, right? Now we're going to talk about personnel security. We're talking about things like background investigations, pre-hire types of protocols, especially with contractors, contacting personal references, doing your due diligence when people apply and write down contacts or places where they've worked before. Actually contacting them might be a good idea to see if they in fact work there. Some laws are weird in some states, and in general, HR people don't like to talk on the record about why somebody left. But, there are ways to check out people's background. A lot of folks on social media, so there's another option for you. But just be careful. Check with your attorneys and your local state and federal laws on certain things that you can and can't do with the pre-hire process. But been through a lot of them myself, and I know they're there and they can be pretty rigorous. So make sure you have a good pre-employment protocol. That includes drug and alcohol testing. Credit checks are an option for you. Some organizations do that. Multiple interviews with any potential employees, tiered interviews, education verification. Just checking out the background of the people you want to bring into the facility is very, very important. And have a formal termination policy and procedure, right? And that includes workplace threat response and prevention policies, workplace violence and security training, which we'll touch on, verification of identity and authorization for work for foreign nationals, making sure that you're rigorous around that kind of stuff. So having a strong HR process is going to help. Before we jump into the second half here that I want to dive into, and this is probably going to linger beyond this episode. As I'm talking, I'm thinking I'm going to reach out to my friend and colleague Sean Rafferty. He's specializes in this area, so I'm going to he may be the first interview I do on the Safety Pro podcast. That would be exciting. I haven't done one, right? I have stayed away from that sort of format for a reason, logistics being the main reason. But Sean and I are tight, so maybe we could work something out and get him to talk about workplace violence and some really good tips that you can use to train your employees and to put together a pretty solid program. So that's what he does, and I respect him. I kind of defer to his judgment on that stuff. So before I introduce you to that topic, I want to take a moment to thank our partners in safety for making all this happen, right? Allowing me to continue to do what I do for you and provide you with access to these free tips and tools and templates and downloads. They're in large part responsible for helping me continue to be able to do this. One, of course, Who's on Location. Who'sonlocation.com, the website you need to go to right now. If you take site security personally and seriously, as you should, you need to know who's on location. And as they will tell you, safety and security starts with knowing who's on site. Who'sonlocation.com handles visitor management, contractor management, employee attendance, and evacuation management. So imagine everybody who visits the site, contractors, visitors, let's say you have all your employees signing in and out already on this. Just imagine for a moment the visitors and contractors that are coming and going throughout the day on various shifts. It can be a nightmare trying to figure out who's still there especially if you have a drill or if you have an actual event that requires an evacuation, either shelter in place or evacuation. So one particular aspect of the who'sonlocation.com, the service, is the evacuation management. This helps you get your people safe and give first responders critical information about who cannot be accounted for before they put their lives at risk. So this is essentially, it's a web app, okay? It works on iOS, both iPhone and iPad, Microsoft phone and Surface tablets, Android phone and tablets. So because it's a web app, it'll work across all of these other platforms. So anybody with the web app can roll call employees, visitors, and contractors. You can swipe their name from the present on-site list when they're safe. And when you find people on the list that you can't account for, they're either not at their rally station, you don't see them physically, you can, right from the web app, you can contact them by calling them. You can send an SMS text to the people that still need to be verified. And this is a cool feature with the text. If they reply back with the word safe, they're automatically removed from the roll call list. But if they reply with anything other than the word safe, a message goes out to all the other web app users that might be nearby and can lend a hand or have some assistance. Somebody may know where that person is. So it's really good to have all supervisors and marshals connected with this web app. It makes it super efficient when you're trying to evacuate and account for people once you're outside. So that's just one aspect of it. Other things that are pretty standard that you would expect to find, but the way Who's on Location handles them and manages them is seamless. It's perfect. When you log in, you'll love the layout. It's easy to use, user-friendly. You can have, safety agreements and acknowledgments, NDAs that people have to sign when they come to visit your facility, and you could set an expiration limit on that as well. So if it's 12 months and somebody comes back and signs back in as a visitor, it'll say, oops, it's been 12 months since you've signed our NDA or our safety acknowledgement. You have to sign this again. And they digitally sign it right there on an iPad at a kiosk at the front desk. And, get rid of that book that you flip through where everybody's signing in and out throughout the day or the week and you can't tell. You got to go back 4 pages to see who's still on site today. Get rid of all of that. Who'sonlocation.com. Look, go to the website. You can sign up for a 30-day free trial. No credit card, no gimmicks, no catches. You get access to all of the functions and features. And if you sign up and continue with who'sonlocation.com, you don't lose any of your data. It continues. It goes with you. So go ahead and give it a try. Set it up. Give it a whirl. You're not going to be disappointed. Who'sonlocation.com. Next, I want to talk to you about the official floor sign floor marking company of the Safety Pro podcast, none other than Mighty Line Floor Tape. Now, they know how important safety is to your organization. The breadth of the Mighty Line product line covers everything you need to implement a 5S system for the increased productivity of your facility and the safety of your workers. Mighty Line's 5S floor markings are a great way to stay organized. They have the angles, the dots, the arrows. These are just a few of the 5S markings that they offer that you're going to need to organize in a safe and efficient manner your workplaces. Just listen to some of these facts about Mighty Line floor tape. Their patented technology makes it more durable than other floor tapes. That's because Mighty Line tape is 7 times thicker than the average floor tape, and the beveled edge increases durability for forklift traffic. The peel and stick adhesive removes easily, and the best thing, it's made right here in the USA. Look, go to mightylinetape.com/podcast. Get a free sample sent to you. Don't take my word for it. Try it out for yourself. Support these folks. They support the podcast. They're great partners in safety. They're a great group of folks to work with as well. Again, go to mightylinetape.com/podcast. Get a free sample. While you're there, you can even check out past episodes of the Safety Pro podcast. Go to the website, check out what they have. Floor signs. You can use your own high-res logos. Directional signs. Of course, floor tape of all shapes and sizes and floor markings. They even got glow tape and centerline glow tape. Trust me, go to the website, check out everything they have to offer. If you're concerned about the way your workplace looks, just from an organization standpoint and just the fit and finish of your shop floors and your racks and your, all your signs and directional signs and things like that and traffic, for forklifts and foot traffic, you have to go to the website and check out what they have to offer. You won't be disappointed in this partner as well. Again, these partners here, they help make it happen for you. So show them some love And let me know what you think when you visit their websites, and give me a shout. Let me know what you think of their products. If you're trying who'sonlocation.com, why don't you send me an email? We'll talk about it. So on the podcast. And same thing with Mighty Line floor tape. If you've gotten Mighty Line products and you want to share your experience with them, how it's improved safety in the workplace and organization, how their products have held up, shoot me a message. Either LinkedIn, you can do it via Facebook, Twitter, even Instagram, or via email. I'll have the link in the show notes to email me. But share your stories with our partners in safety. I would love to share them with others and talk about that experience that you've had. All right, now let's get into developing a policy and procedures program for workplace violence. Although job-related homicides, they accounted for 15% of fatal work injuries back in 1996, even the construction industry have experienced a few deaths from workplace violence, something to consider. 2%, approximately 12 workers, were job site homicide victims. So, this touches different industries. And for each murder, there were countless incidents of workplace violence in which victims were threatened or injured directly. But because this is a growing problem at the workplace place across the country, it's good for a company to develop its own company-specific worksite violence policies and procedures manuals, and develop some training as well. There is evidence that suggests workplace violence is largely preventable through the development and implementation of a specific policy and procedures. And now, to be effective, company policy and procedures have to discourage all types of worksite violence. They must encourage employees to come forward in the event that they are victims of or witnesses to any prohibited behavior. We're talking about a zero tolerance policy, but it goes beyond that, right? Because that's still reactionary. You have to witness the act in order to respond to it. So what I want to do is I want to finish up with sort of what I got laid out here to get you started, and I want to bring Sean Rafferty, a colleague of mine, on to talk about how you can go even deeper than some of these basic policies and procedures in actually preventing workplace violence, in the workplace. So that's going to be in a future episode. I'm committing to it. Hold me to it, folks. Keep the emails coming and say, hey, where's Sean? And we'll get him on here. So when developing your policy and procedure, it's important to remember employers are not likely to adhere to something that they don't understand. So to prevent this, you need to refrain from using legal jargon or referencing other documents that employees may not be familiar with. Also, resist the urge to adopt any model or sample policy and procedures without first modifying them to address specific needs of your company. So don't take a canned, off-the-shelf template from the internet. Even the templates I provide, they have a lot of blanks in them that forces you to fill in, your company-specific information. So that's what you need to do. You need to model it against your company, okay? Once you have a draft document prepared, you may find it helpful to get some employee feedback regarding its clarity and completeness. See if people understand it. Get some input from some workers, okay? A small worker group. At a minimum, your workplace violence policy and procedures should include a statement that your company won't tolerate workplace violence of any kind, a description of prohibited behaviors and actions, detailed procedures for reporting and investigating alleged instances of such behavior, measures which will be taken to ensure confidentiality, and also reassurance to that end, right? Reassurance that retaliation for reporting an incident will not go unpunished. What we're talking about here is that if somebody reports something and another coworker finds out about it, we're not going to tolerate any kind of retaliation of that being held against you. Kind of goes hand in hand with the confidentiality piece, right? Disciplinary action that will be imposed for engaging in any prohibited behavior as well as for retaliating against another employee, that has to be spelled out. You also want to make sure you cover efforts that will be made to communicate the company policy. And you want to do it in multiple ways. You want to also, want to send a link to the document. You want to give people a copy of it. You should also develop an online version of it through maybe some e-learning, or have some sessions where people sign in. You talk through the policy and get some acknowledgement. You have to be able to do it several ways. You can't just, email the document out to people and say, it's good, we notified people. You want to make sure you cover your bases here. You also want to make sure you cover methods that will be used to monitor workplace security. Now, to be effective, policies and procedures, they have to be appropriate for the workplace, easily understood by all employees, revised as necessary to address changing conditions, and reviewed with employees on a regular basis. So I'll have a guide to help you develop a work site violence policy and procedures to address specific needs of your company. It'll have like a sample policy statement where you got to fill some stuff in, as I said before, but make sure you tailor it to your company. I also have some examples of prohibited behavior as well listed in there, and reporting and investigation procedures. Just as an example, this one here says, in keeping with this policy, fill in the blank, prohibits any employee from engaging in any act either on company premises or during the performance of work-related duties that, 1, threatens the safety and health of an employee or customer, 2, affects the health, life, or well-being of an employee or customer, or 3, results in damage to company or employee or customer property. So it's going to spell some things out, and then you just need to make sure you tweak it and customize it to your company needs. That's very important, okay? It's going to cover things, like I said, prohibited behavior, reporting and investigation procedures, confidentiality, discipline, and even retaliation is covered as well. There's also training and awareness. There's also a part of this that you're going to want to make sure you include for training and awareness. How are you going to train your employees? So who's going to conduct the training? Where the record is going to be kept? What about training materials? Are you going to use the standard run, hide, fight video? Everybody uses that one now. But, that's good. But what are you going to do, in conjunction with that, with your written policy? So that's going to be laid out in there. And then also, making sure that you put a statement in there that all employees are encouraged to take an active role in creating a safe work environment. And, you want any suggestions on improving the programs, the policies, and procedures to that end from your employees. You want to make sure you encourage that. So that template will be laid out for you, and that'll be down. You can just click the link and download that. Okay. And again, I'm going to restate this. Maybe it's I'm trying to hold myself accountable, but I've got to get Sean on the horn and get him on an episode to really break this stuff down. I mean, he's a pro. You're going to really be impressed in what he has to say about what employers can do to protect the safety and health of their workers when it comes to these types of topics, right? Safety, security, and workplace violence. So I'm going to get him on here and talk about him. I did kind of float the idea past him, so he's okay with it, dropping his name. And again, I'll let him know I mentioned his name in the podcast, and I'll have more information about him in a future episode. But we'll get him lined up and get you the tools and the information you need to go down this road. You don't have to go down blind. You don't have to go down alone, okay? Other people have gone through this and have got some really effective safety and security protocols in place. So we're going to try to share as much as we can with you, all right? So I wanted to introduce this topic and give you some things that you need to get started with a policy manual and program manual. Download the template I have. That'll help you get started. And then a follow-on episode where we kind of dig deep into sort of how to prevent workplace violence incidents, on a cultural level within your organizations, and how you can kind of foster the right culture that you need to prevent these horrible things from happening. So we'll get Sean in here to share that stuff with you. He's very passionate about that stuff. So he'll talk forever about this stuff with you. So that's what's great about Sean. So I'll get that going. And until the next Safety Pro podcast episode, be safe.